He gave my daughter a broken doll from his garage while his kids unwrapped iPads. iPads I'd unknowingly funded through emergency loans. The room went dead silent. Not the respectful silence of awe, but the thick, syrupy silence of collective discomfort. 20 people, a mix of family and my parents' friends, just sat there watching. Forks froze midair, halfway to mouths full of honey-glazed ham. The only sound was the crinkling of expensive wrapping paper as my nephews, Cole and Brianna, tore into their second and third gifts. My brother Chase stood there with a self-satisfied smirk plastered across his face, the kind he always wore when he thought he'd been clever. My daughter Lily, who was only 6, looked down at the thing in her hands. It was a doll, technically. One of those plastic baby dolls from the 90s. Its synthetic hair was a matted, tangled nest. One of its arms was missing, leaving a clean round hole at the shoulder socket. There was a dark smudge of what looked like grease or garage dirt across its cheek. Lily, bless her heart, tried to smile. It was a watery, trembling thing that didn't reach her eyes. She looked from the broken toy to the gleaming white boxes her cousins held, her small face a canvas of confusion. "It teaches gratitude," Chase said, his voice loud enough for the whole table to hear. He gestured toward the doll with a dismissive flick of his wrist. Kids these days are so spoiled. They need to learn to appreciate what they have. And then, the worst part. The part that broke something deep inside me. My mother laughed. It wasn't a big, hearty laugh. It was a small, tittering giggle, a sound she made when she was nervous or wanted to smooth over something unpleasant. It was the sound of endorsement, the sound of permission. My father, as always, became intensely interested in the pattern of the gravy on his mashed potatoes. He didn't look up. He didn't say a word. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I simply looked around the table, from my mother's complicit smile to my father's deliberate ignorance, to the uncomfortable shifting of the guests, and finally, to my brother's smug face. I felt nothing. Not anger, not pity. Nothing. It was a clean, quiet severance. My name is Sandra Bennett, and for the last 5 years, I was the invisible wallet. I was the emergency contact, the financial backstop, the silent partner in my family's dysfunction. They didn't know I was prepared. They didn't know that for every desperate phone call, every sob story, every promise to pay me back, I had a record. They thought I would take this, just like I had taken everything else. They were wrong. If you've ever been the responsible one in a family of users, hit that like button. If you've ever had to choose between your family and your own sanity, you know the kind of precipice I was standing on. They thought I was a doormat. They were about to find out I was a fortress, and the drawbridge was going up for good. My role as the family ATM didn't start overnight. It was a slow, creeping cancer that metastasized over years of carefully cultivated dynamics. Chase is 4 years younger than me, but in the eyes of our parents, he was the sun and I was a distant, functional planet, useful for my gravitational pull, but unworthy of a closer look. He was the golden child, the one with potential. I was the practical one, the one who was good with numbers. When we were kids, this translated into him getting the new Schwinn bicycle, while I inherited the rusty hand-me-down with a wobbly wheel. He was enrolled in expensive summer art camps to nurture his creativity, while I spent my summers babysitting to save for school clothes. Our parents called it playing to our strengths. I called it what it was, a blatant, painful favoritism that taught me my worth was in what I could provide, while his was inherent. He went to a private art school for a year and a half before dropping out, leaving my parents with $30,000 in non-refundable tuition debt. There was no lecture, no consequence. Just a sad shake of my father's head and my mother's refrain. The artistic temperament is a fragile thing. I went to a local community college for 2 years, working 30 hours a week as a waitress, before transferring to a state university and finishing my degree in health information management. I paid for every single credit myself. When I graduated, my parents took me to a chain restaurant for dinner. When Chase dropped out, they threw a welcome home party. This pattern solidified in adulthood. I got a job as a medical coder. It's not a glamorous profession. I don't post pictures of myself in exotic locations with sponsored products. I sit at a computer and translate medical services into universal codes for billing. It requires precision, focus, and a deep understanding of complex systems. I was good at it. Very good. Within 5 years, I was managing a team, earning a solid 6-figure salary. I lived modestly. I drove a reliable 7-year-old Honda. I saved aggressively, building a future for myself and for Lily. Chase, on the other hand, became an influencer. His Instagram was a carefully curated fantasy of a life he wasn't actually living. Pictures of him in designer clothes he rented for the day. Photos of him sipping cocktails at rooftop bars he couldn't afford. Carefully angled shots on vacation that were actually day trips to a fancy hotel lobby 2 towns over. He had about 50,000 followers, a significant portion of whom I suspected he'd bought. To our parents, he was a creative entrepreneur, a modern-day success story. My steady, quiet, and far more substantial success was invisible. It was just Sandra's boring office job. The loans started 5 years ago, shortly after Lily was born. The first one was for $1,500. He called me in a panic. His wife, Jessica, had a medical emergency, and their insurance wouldn't cover it. He was sobbing. "I don't know what to do, Sandra. I can't let her suffer." I didn't hesitate. I transferred the money immediately. 2 weeks later, Jessica posted a photo on Facebook with a brand new designer handbag. The exact model cost $1,495. When I quietly asked Chase about it, he got defensive. What, she's not allowed to have something nice? After her ordeal? He never specified what the ordeal was. That was the first time. I should have stopped then. But I didn't. I stayed quiet to keep the peace. A few months later, it was a rent emergency. He needed $2,000 by the end of the day or they'd be evicted. He promised to pay me back with his next sponsorship deal. I sent the money. That weekend, he posted a video of himself test driving a new luxury SUV. The caption was, "Dreaming big, #manifestation, #grindset." The down payment on the lease, I later learned, was exactly $2,000. Every time he got a new gadget, a new toy, a new piece of designer clothing, a call to me had preceded it. The excuses were a masterclass in manipulative fiction. There was the $3,500 for emergency dental work for his son, Cole. A week later, Cole had a new top-of-the-line gaming console with a virtual reality headset. There was the $5,000 for a surefire investment opportunity that would set him up for life. The investment, it turned out, was a week-long trip to an all-inclusive resort in Cancun, which he documented heavily for content. There was the $2,800 to fix the transmission on their car. The car was never fixed. Instead, they hired a professional photographer for a family photo shoot in an apple orchard, complete with matching custom-ordered outfits. I wasn't a fool. I knew on some level that I was being lied to. But I was trapped in a cycle of hope and obligation. Hope that this time would be the last time. Hope that he would finally get his act together. And a deep, conditioned sense of obligation, hammered into me by my parents. Family backs family. Always has, my mother would say whenever I expressed the slightest hesitation. He's just finding his way, Sandra. You're the stable one. It's your job to help. My father's support was quieter, but just as effective. He would simply sigh and say, "Don't upset your mother." His silence was permission. It was a green light for the exploitation to continue. After the third loan, a little voice in my head, the pragmatic coder part of my brain, told me to start documenting everything. It wasn't because I planned to act on it. It was for my own sanity. I needed proof that I wasn't crazy, that the gaslighting was real. I drafted a simple promissory note template. It detailed the loan amount, the date, and a repayment schedule that we both knew he would never follow. To my surprise, he always signed them. He'd scrawl his signature with a flourish, treating it like a joke. "Making it all official, huh, big sis?" He'd laugh. "Don't worry, you'll get it all back, with interest." He thought it was a game. He didn't understand that to me, it was data. It was a record of transactions. In my world, records mattered. Over 5 years, the total came to $47,000. $47,000 of my daughter's future. $47,000 of my sweat, my long hours, my discipline. It was money that could have been a down payment on a house for us. It could have been her entire college fund. Instead, it had been funneled into a black hole of my brother's ego, funding a life of performative wealth. I tried to pull back several times. A year before the Christmas incident, I told him I couldn't lend him any more money. The response was nuclear. He called me, screaming that I was selfish, that I was trying to sabotage his career. Then came the call from my mother. "I am so disappointed in you, Sandra," she said, her voice dripping with manufactured sorrow. "Your brother is on the verge of a major breakthrough, and you want to pull the rug out from under him? After all we've done for you? All you've done for me?" I almost choked. "I paid for my own college. I bought my own car. I support myself and my daughter completely." "What exactly have you done for me that compares to what I've done for him?" "We gave you a roof over your head for 18 years, she shrieked. "We raised you. This is what family does. You help each other. You don't keep score." It was then that I realized the profound, unbridgeable gap in our realities. In her mind, her parental duty of providing basic care was a debt I could never repay, while my subsidizing of her 28-year-old son's lavish lifestyle was my simple obligation. I caved. I gave him another $2,000 for camera equipment. I was weak. I chose the path of least resistance. I stayed quiet to keep the peace. That weakness gnawed at me. I saw how it affected Lily. At family gatherings, my nephews would show off their new drones, their new tablets, their expensive sneakers. Lily, with her modest, carefully chosen toys, would watch them, a quiet longing in her eyes. My mother would coo over her grandsons, praising Chase and Jessica for being such wonderful, generous parents. They never seemed to notice that this generosity was being underwritten by me, or more accurately, they chose not to notice. The accumulation of these grievances was like a low-grade fever, a constant, draining sickness in the background of my life. It was the text from Jessica with a link to a $500 pair of shoes, captioned, "OMG, Brianna would love these for her dance recital." It was the phone call from my dad not asking how I was, but asking if I could help Chase out with his property taxes. It was seeing them all post a happy family photo from a vacation I had inadvertently paid for, with no mention of me or Lily, as if we didn't exist. The final Christmas was the culmination of it all. We were at my parents' house. The tree was grotesquely large, dripping with ornaments and lights. The table was laden with food. The air was thick with the scent of pine and cinnamon and hypocrisy. I had brought thoughtful, age-appropriate gifts for my nephews, spending $100 on each of them. I gave my parents a gift certificate to their favorite restaurant. I gave Chase and Jessica a high-end coffee maker they had mentioned wanting. I had, as always, played my part. Then came the gift exchange. Cole and Brianna made out like bandits. A mountain of brightly wrapped presents was piled at their feet. The iPads were the grand finale. They shrieked with delight, their faces illuminated by the bright screens. My parents beamed. "Oh, Chase, you shouldn't have," my mother gushed, as if he had personally earned the money to buy them. Then it was Lily's turn. Chase walked over with a single, small gift wrapped in a crumpled plastic grocery bag. Not even proper wrapping paper. A grocery bag. "Here you go, sweetie," he said, handing it to her. That's when he gave her the broken doll. That's when he delivered his line about gratitude. That's when my mother giggled. And in that moment, watching my 6-year-old daughter fight back tears over a piece of trash while her cousins ignored her in favor of their $1,000 electronics that I had paid for, something inside me snapped. It was not a loud, dramatic crack. It was a clean, quiet break. A shift in the tectonic plates of my soul. The years of resentment, of being overlooked, of being used, coalesced into a single point of cold, hard clarity. The need to keep the peace was gone. The hope that they would change was gone. The fear of being cast out was gone. All that was left was a calm, chilling certainty. I was done. I looked at Chase's smug face, and for the first time, I didn't see my little brother. I saw a con artist. I looked at my mother's smiling face, and I didn't see a parent. I saw an accomplice. I stood up. My chair scraped against the hardwood floor, a harsh, ugly sound in the suddenly quiet room. "Lily, honey, let's get your coat," I said. My voice was even, devoid of emotion. "Sandra, don't be so dramatic," my mother started, her smile faltering. "It was just a joke." "Was it?" I looked directly at her. "Was it a joke when you asked me to cover his rent last month? Was it a joke when I paid for his car insurance? Was it a joke when I transferred him money for his medical bills that paid for your family vacation?" The color drained from her face. Chase's smirk vanished, replaced by a flicker of panic. "I don't know what you're talking about," he stammered. I didn't bother responding to him. I was done talking to him. I helped Lily, who was clutching the broken doll to her chest as if it were a treasure, into her winter coat. I picked up my purse. I walked to the door. "You can't just leave," my mother cried, following me. "It's Christmas. Think about how this looks." I turned at the door, my hand on the knob. "I am thinking about how this looks," I said, my voice as cold as the winter air outside. "I'm looking at my daughter, who was just taught that she is worth less than her cousins, that her feelings don't matter, and I've decided this is the last lesson she will ever learn in this house." I walked out without another word. I buckled Lily into her car seat. She was quiet, her face pale. "Mommy," she whispered, "why doesn't Uncle Chase like me?" That question was the final nail in the coffin of my old life. "Oh, baby, I said, my voice finally breaking. "This has nothing to do with you, and everything to do with him being a very, very silly man. We're not going to see him for a while." When we got home, I put Lily to bed. I sat with her, stroking her hair until she fell asleep. Then I went to my office. I pulled out a locked file box from the bottom of my closet. Inside was a neat accordion file labeled Chase. I opened it. Every promissory note was there, dated and signed. Every manipulative text message, screenshotted and printed. Every bank statement showing the transfers from my account to his. 5 years of evidence. 5 years of his entitlement and my enablement. My thumb moved slowly across my phone screen. I didn't call a lawyer. I didn't need to. The total amount, $47,000, was above the limit for small claims court in my state. I would have to file a civil suit. But I knew the first step was a formal demand letter. I spent the next 2 hours drafting it. I cited every loan, every date, every amount. I attached copies of the signed promissory notes. I gave him 30 days to establish a repayment plan, or I would proceed with legal action to recover the full amount, plus interest, plus legal fees. My hands didn't shake. My stomach was calm. The cut was clean. I sent it via certified mail the day after Christmas. The barrage started the moment he received it. My phone blew up. Dozens of missed calls. A flood of text messages. First came the threats from Chase. "How dare you? You're trying to ruin my life. You'll tear this family apart." When I didn't respond, the tone shifted to manipulative pleading. "Come on, Sandra. You know I'm good for it. I've just had a run of bad luck. Don't do this to your little brother. We're family." Then came the texts from my mother. They were vicious. "You selfish, ungrateful child. After everything we've done for you, Chase is your brother. Family backs family. Always has. You are making a terrible mistake and you will regret this for the rest of your life." And finally, the single pathetic text from my father. "Pools call her mother. She's very upset." I read every single message. I let their frantic, toxic energy wash over me, and I felt nothing but a profound sense of relief. I wasn't losing a family. I was losing a burden. A tumor I had been carrying for years was finally being excised. I blocked all their numbers. I created filters in my email to send anything from them directly to a trash folder. The silence that followed was the most peaceful sound I had ever heard. Chase, of course, ignored the demand letter. He believed right up until the end that I would back down, that it was all a bluff, that I was just being dramatic and would eventually come crawling back to maintain the family's toxic equilibrium. He was wrong. On day 31, I paid a retainer to a lawyer and had him officially served. The fallout was swift and, from my detached perspective, grimly satisfying. The lawsuit was real. Chase had to hire a lawyer he couldn't afford. The promissory notes were ironclad. There was no defense. His lawyer advised him to settle, but he was too arrogant. He was convinced he could charm a judge the way he charmed our parents. The legal process dragged on for months. During that time, the river of my money that had irrigated his fake life ran dry. The first thing to go was the leased luxury SUV. It was repossessed in the middle of the night. Then came the eviction notice from their overpriced apartment. Jessica started a GoFundMe page, claiming they were victims of a sudden and tragic financial hardship. She didn't mention it was because her husband's sister had finally decided to stop paying for their lifestyle. It raised a grand total of $200. They were forced to move into a cramped, run-down apartment in a bad part of town. Chase's influencer career imploded. Without new content, the fancy trips, the designer clothes, the fine dining, his feed became stale. His follower count plummeted. The few small brands he had worked with dropped him. The fantasy was over. Reality, it turned out, was a brutal editor. The court date finally arrived. Chase showed up in a suit that was clearly rented and 2 sizes too big. He tried to argue that the money was a gift, that I was a vindictive sister, jealous of his success. My lawyer simply presented the stack of signed promissory notes. The judge took one look at them, then at my brother's pathetic attempt at a performance, and ruled in my favor. The judgment was for the full $47,000, plus 9% interest, plus my attorney's fees. The total came to just over $58,000. The regret on his face was heavier than any debt. It was the look of a man who had played a stupid game and was just now realizing the prizes were all fake. A wage garnishment order was issued. Chase was forced to get a real job. He ended up working a night shift, stocking shelves at a big box grocery store. Jessica had to go back to work as a receptionist. The iPads were sold to pay for their security deposit. The designer clothes were sold on consignment for pennies on the dollar. Their curated life was dismantled piece by piece, until nothing was left but the ugly, unsupported truth. I observed all of this from a great distance, like watching a documentary about the collapse of a foolish civilization. I felt no joy in their suffering, but I felt no pity either. I felt a quiet, resolute sense of order being restored to the universe. Their choices, their consequences, not mine. As their world shrank, mine expanded. The money that had once been siphoned off by Chase's endless emergencies now went into a high-yield savings account for Lily's education. I took the $3,500 I would have given him for his dental work and enrolled Lily in dance and gymnastics. She thrived. The quiet, hesitant child from that awful Christmas dinner blossomed into a confident, joyful girl. We took a real vacation, just the 2 of us. We went to the ocean. We built sandcastles and collected seashells and ate ice cream on the boardwalk. One evening, as we watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, Lily turned to me. "This is the best day ever, Mommy," she said, her smile as bright and genuine as the sun itself. A year after I walked out of my parents' house, I used the money I had saved to put a down payment on a small house with a big backyard. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. We planted a garden. We adopted a rescue dog. We filled our home not with expensive things, but with laughter and peace and the quiet security of a life built on a solid foundation. I never heard from my parents again. I assume they took Chase's side, unable or unwilling to admit their role in creating the monster he became. Sometimes I feel a faint phantom limb of pain where that family used to be, but it passes quickly. It's easier when people show you exactly who they are. You just have to be brave enough to believe them. Protecting your child is a parent's most fundamental duty. It means protecting them from harm, from neglect, and sometimes from the very people who are supposed to love them the most. Blood doesn't guarantee loyalty. It doesn't guarantee kindness or respect. Loyalty earns its place. Respect is a two-way street. Some doors have to close so that better, brighter ones can open. I wasn't losing a family that day. I was saving mine, the small, perfect one of 2 that mattered more than anything, and I have never, not for a single second, regretted it.